Can someone ram their car into a crowd of protesters and be immune from criminal prosecution? Stay tuned, and I'll answer that question. Welcome back. The question today is whether or not someone can ram their car into a crowd of protesters and be immune from criminal prosecution. Well, it depends on what state you're in, and I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. But before we get into that, I got sad news. A young man by the name of Dustin Powell was killed by a police officer in a small Texas town on February 7th, 2021. Dustin was shot through the chest. Dustin was a fine young man from a good family, and he did not deserve to die. Dustin was only 34 years old. He would have turned 35 this year. Again, he should still be here, and his family should not be grieving. They deserve justice in this case, and we intend to get justice for them. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you about before I answer that first question about whether a person can drive his or her car into a crowd of protesters and be immune from criminal prosecution, there's one other thing I want to talk to you about, and it is this thing called qualified immunity. After Derek Chauvin was found guilty on 3 different charges in Minneapolis, the Senate has been talking more and more about police reform. The George Floyd Justice in Policing Act is currently in front of the Senate as I speak. And the Senate is trying to pass the legislation. And the hang-up is qualified immunity. Remember, qualified immunity protects police officers in civil court. And the question that they're grappling with is whether or not it should be abolished completely for the police officers. And so there's a compromise that's working its way through the Senate, and that is qualified immunity would be kept for police officers, but it would be abolished with respect to police departments. I am opposed to that compromise because police officers should be held directly accountable for their actions. So long as qualified immunity protects them in civil court, and they already have all kinds of protections in criminal court, they're not going to change their behavior. But when they know the families of their victims can bring them in court, can get civil judgments against them, they will think twice before they just indiscriminately kill black people. So again, I am opposed to a compromise on qualified immunity. I think qualified immunity should be completely, totally abolished. Now, that brings me to the question of the day, and that is whether or not a person can ram his car into a crowd of protesters and have immunity from criminal prosecution. Well, believe it or not, in some states, yes, that person would have immunity. Now, what I'm talking about is a set of laws called anti-protesting laws. There are 81 anti-protest laws in 34 states in the country. And they are ridiculous. It almost sounds like we're in Russia instead of the United States of America, where we have the First Amendment. The First Amendment protects our right to protest and our right to assemble. For example, in the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, this dude is out of his mind, to be honest with you. He signed a bill into law that grants protection for people who drive their car into protesting crowds. So if someone gets frustrated with protesters and just ram their car into a group of protesters, killing or injuring one of them or some of them, in Florida, they would be immune from criminal prosecution. And not only Florida, but Oklahoma and Iowa and other states are passing similar legislation. It is outrageous. It is inhumane. It is berserk. What is wrong with the GOP? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with the GOP. They're doing everything they can to protect white supremacy. They are afraid of the Black Lives Matter movement because the Black Lives Matter movement has successfully caused police reform to be on the front burner. And this is their response. Their response is to stop protesting. Whether it violates the First Amendment or not, these folks are just completely, totally out of their minds. It doesn't matter to them. They are afraid and they are striking back. This is what is commonly called white backlash, pure and simple. So these anti-protest laws are just reprehensible to me. They're un-American. What is more American than protesting your government? This country was actually formed in protest. The founders of this country, the King of England, came here and established America. The most famous American protest was the Boston Tea Party protest. And so now, because the country is browning, because the country is becoming a majority brown country rather than a majority white country, the GOP's response is to do away with the protests. And in most of these states that are passing these anti-protest laws, if someone is charged and convicted with these anti-protest laws, they are convicted felons now. And convicted felons, guess what? They lose the right to vote. So not only are these anti-protest laws a violation of the First Amendment, they are also voter suppression laws. All of this, again, is intended to protect white supremacy. So these anti-protest laws sounds like something that you would hear about, again, in Russia or Venezuela, not a democratic country like the United States of America. I needed to inform you about these anti-protest laws because even though you may not find yourself out protesting, maybe your children, your grandchildren, or people you know, and all of a sudden now, they are facing cars that are ramming into groups of them knowing that they have immunity, or they're being convicted as felons for going out and protesting something that they feel strongly about. I predict that these states will be sued, and I believe that the U.S. Supreme Court will strike down many of these anti-protest laws. However, I am aware that 6 of the 9 U.S. Supreme Court justices are conservative, and they may be in agreement with these anti-protest laws. But I'm holding out some hope that the First Amendment will protect folks' rights to protest, and this crazy immunity given to folks who will ram their cars and kill people because they don't like protesting, I hope that they will be struck down as well because, again, they endanger people's lives. I mean, these kinds of laws will endanger people's lives. There's no question that some of these white supremacists will use this law to kill people who are out protesting. So unfortunately, yes, in several states in our country, it is now legal for people to ram their cars in a group of protesters and get immunity from criminal prosecution. You heard it here with attorney Augustus Corbett. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for tuning in. You have a good one. Bye.